When I first started reading The Waters of Mars by Phil Ford, I was a bit disappointed. The Waters of Mars, much like Planet of the Ood, was released on the 13th of July 2023 alongside Kablam, Warriors Gate and Beyond, and The Zygon Invasion. The first half of this book is, as I said before in my other videos that I don't particularly enjoy, pretty standard kind of novelizing the TV episode. If you've read this book, I would really like to hear what you think, because some parts of it I really enjoyed, some parts of it I got really bored, especially at the start where I really thought I was going to have 3 books in a row that were quite boring. To be fair though, it definitely didn't feel too bogged down in the dialogue and the plot that happened. The plot was very much the same, but the dialogue I feel that was chosen and to be represented in this novelization was not exactly word for word the stuff that happened in the episode, so I did appreciate that. I'd say the main issue with the dialogue though is that the emotional beats didn't hit as hard. For example, when the Doctor realizes he's on Bowie Base 1, in the episode you have obviously these frames where the newspaper shows up and you're cutting between all these characters, whereas in the book you have to create the pacing for yourself, or you obviously kind of visualize the episode, and I feel like it's a bit lazy for a novelization to just make you visualize the episode. So when you create the pacing in your brain yourself, it doesn't really work as well, but you know, the idea is still there. That being said, just because the dialogue falls short, I wouldn't say that the whole novelization falls short. It only really falls short in regards to the fact that you're comparing it to the TV episode, which The Waters of Mars is such a phenomenal, popular, arguably one of the best Doctor Who episodes of all time, especially in modern Who. So when you're making a novelization of something like that, you've got a lot to live up to. So I would definitely say the novelization without the TV episode holds its own, but when you've got something so strong to compare it against, it kind of falls short of that high standard. I'd say it slightly plays down the Doctor's realization of Bowie Base 1, because in the episodes you get this thought that the Doctor is really familiar with these people and they are known across the universe, let alone just on Earth. But in this one, it's shown that he just kind of reads a newspaper in Manhattan and that's just what he's remembering, as if instead of it being like something that he's always been familiar with and always knows about wherever he is, it's these people on Bowie Base 1 and how influential they are. Instead it just kind of shows that he read it in a newspaper, but he still says all this stuff about everyone remembering them, even though it feels like from his perspective he's just read it in a newspaper, which doesn't really kind of correlate. The novelization does benefit from the popularity of this episode because there are so many characters. I personally really struggle when there's so many characters in a book, but thankfully, because obviously I've watched this episode quite a number of times, I'm already familiar with these characters. I can't remember exactly how many people there are on Bowie Base 1, but because I've seen the episode and I have a visual and a character already in my brain of these characters, it's easy to kind of visualize them when they're on paper. But if I didn't have this visual aid, basically, I would struggle a lot. But I think that's just a personal difficulty. I just find it hard to remember all these different characters. So the episode helps it in that regard. But if the episode wasn't there, again, so many different characters would be so difficult. The episode definitely gives more time to all of the characters equally, obviously aside from Adelaide, because she's kind of the main one. And the book kind of does the same, but yeah, like I said, I find it difficult to remember all of these different characters. I'd say Roman, the junior technician, was probably shown less than maybe his TV counterpart, and you don't even get the funny scene where he's struggling a lot with the gadget's controls when the Doctor's kind of supercharged his thrusters. The Doctor still does that, but you don't actually get Roman's side of it, which is, I'm not really sure why, but I suppose maybe they're trying, with the book, it's a lot more difficult to cut back and forth between 2 things happening at the same time in different locations, so that might have been why. Like I said earlier, it did disappoint me for the first half. All of these bits and bobs that I've been mentioning are quite minor in terms of the characters and the dialogue. They aren't as extreme in like the Fires of Pompeii and Planet of the Ood, where they do feel like just rehashes of the episode. There are some things that are being changed, generally not for the better, but also like it's still a really solid story. So it would actually be quite difficult for Phil Ford to screw it up this badly. So obviously he didn't, and it is still interesting for the first half. But it's once the flood has begun to infiltrate, once they've kind of left the biodome, that's where it really gets started. All the kind of slow crawl up to that moment is interesting, not necessarily enticing to read, but it once you've gotten to the halfway point, pretty much exactly halfway, I think it's chapter 9, it is kind of just a slow burn up until then, which like I said, is not too bad, but it's really interesting from chapter 9. Halfway, this book gets really, really good. Once they're all kind of running around, the tension and the pacing is as good as the story. You really feel that these characters need to get the hell out of there. Adelaide and the Doctor absolutely running around, just kind of barking orders at, not really the Doctor, but Adelaide barking orders at everyone, kind of making sure everyone gets everything done. It is really, really satisfying in this. And I think it goes to show that Lindsay Duncan's performance is really just ingrained in everyone's memory of the Waters of Mars. I think it is really difficult to think of anyone other than Lindsay Duncan playing Adelaide. She is absolutely phenomenal in the episode, and you can only picture her here in the book. All the other characters could be someone else. It's not like Gemma Chan as Mia, you would have no idea. But Lindsay Duncan does a phenomenal job in the episode, and you can't visualize anyone else. Like I said earlier, chapter 9 is for me where it really gets started. It is an original chapter, not the whole premise, because it is just about Adelaide and her experience in the Dalek invasion of the Stolen Earth and Journey's End. But it starts with her in a Girl Guide scout camp thing, with a couple of her friends, and how her and her friends journey back to London to get to their parents alongside an absolute legend in a van named Peter. Rest in peace. The only main issue I have with this chapter is that it's all written in italics, and it can be quite difficult to read sometimes, but that's a very minor issue. It's a nice addition seeing how Adelaide took responsibility for the protection of others even at that age. Although the whole interaction with the Dalek outside her window that we see in the Waters of Mars was really, really minor, and it would have been cool to see maybe a small expansion of that, although I suppose maybe that's the point. Maybe the fact that everything happened so fast in the invasion and how small of a moment it was makes the kind of trail on effect even bigger. Adelaide got to her feet and began walking through the smashed crockery and spilled food and terrified children towards the tent entrance. Everything was darkness around her. Part of her was wondering why she wasn't shivering and sobbing with fear like so many of the other kids she saw on the ground, clinging to the legs of chairs or tables or each other. She was nervous, yes, she trembled, but it was with curiosity and with anticipation, not fear. Whatever had just happened here, she knew that it was far from natural, and more than anything, she wanted to understand it. The following chapter, chapter 10, is by far the most interesting of this book. By the looks of it, it might have been a removed scene from an initial or early draft of The Waters of Mars. Phil Ford at the end of the book in the acknowledgements says how he was able to get a hold of some of the earlier drafts of the script, so presumably some of the old deleted scenes and deleted moments might have been included here. In this chapter, Adelaide leads the Doctor into an even more secret underground bunker kind of area, which holds what seems to be an alien-looking pillar in the middle of this room. It was built by none other than the Ice Warriors, of course, the original inhabitants of Mars, and it reveals that Mia is actually not a geologist, she's actually there as a translator, and they put her down on the manifest as a geologist so as not to arise suspicion. The Doctor is able to translate this pillar, and he lets Adelaide know that it's essentially a warning from the Ice Warriors in regards to the flood. I am Vazal, Lord Prime Commander of my people. We have lived in the world of ice and snow for centuries since the magnetic storms that ravaged our planet. We are the last species of our once magnificent world that teemed with life of every kind of abundance. But now even we hardy people must flee this planet that we have loved, and I leave this warning to any future pioneers who might seek to explore what we leave behind. Beware, this world is cursed. The ice that has given us shelter and secure for millennia, allowing us to rebuild our kind in the wake of our planet's long death, has turned against us. Its waters have brought up a contagion of hideous metamorphosis to which our armour and resolve are but frail leaves in resistance. The flood, for that is the name of this curse, came upon a meteor and found home in our waters and the ice that was once our salvation. No longer so. For the life that lives within it now takes life and destroys it cell by cell, remaking it in its own hideous nature. An abomination of drowned flesh that cannot be destroyed, for who can destroy water? In this way, the flood made an army of what were once our comrades, lovers and children, turned by the touch of just a single drop of water, and then set this legion against us to absorb us into its ranks. We are warriors, we fear no enemy, but against water we are powerless. All that we can do is render it inert as ice, but that is no victory. We are warriors, we fear no enemy, but against water we are powerless. All that we can do is render it inert as ice, but that is no victory, for the water lies still and deep in the ground. And so we leave our world to its long death and seek new planets for our people among the stars, and I leave you, future visitors, this warning: do not wake the waters. I found this really interesting, and it was a really nice addition to this story. I love being able to link lore between Doctor Who stories, but in a more subtle way. You know, the TV episode, I believe, already mentions the Ice Warriors, but having this nice link, but not even like a direct appearance from the Ice Warriors, is quite interesting to me. I love being able to be like, oh, the Ice Warriors are involved in this story, but they're not even here. You know, they're on Mars, the old planet of the Ice Warriors, but they left a long time ago. So it's quite interesting to see a barren planet that was once the home world of a mighty civilization that we have seen before many times, but without their involvement. It also led to me having a look at The Wolves of Winter, a 12th Doctor comic story with the Ice Warriors and the Flood, and how the Flood made an attempt to get into Earth and actually managed to get to Earth, but how obviously the 12th Doctor managed to put a stop to that. All the Time Lord Victorious stuff at the end definitely still works. It's just missing that amazing on-screen relationship between Lindsay Duncan and David Tennant. There's even a mention of the War Chief and a kind of extra prologue, mostly with Adelaide's granddaughter Susie, as well as Yuri and Mia. It talks about how Earth, it kind of creates all these conspiracy theories around what happened. How did Adelaide and Mia and Yuri, for that matter, get back to Earth on the same day that Bow Base 1 exploded? What happened on Bow Base 1? Did Bow Base 1 even exist? But then also how Mia and Yuri tried to tell everyone what happened, but only bits and bobs would come out over time, and how obviously Susie still went out into the stars and became this explorer that she was always going to be, because the Doctor cannot meddle with time. Time will always happen, especially those fixed points that he loved to try and stop, but very much couldn't here. You really get an idea in this book. It really goes deep into how the Doctor gets a massive complex at the end of this episode. Something snaps in the Doctor and he's like, I can do anything. It mentions the Time Lord Victorious a couple times. Obviously, since the release of the whole multimedia stuff, Time Lord Victorious, it was kind of expanded on a lot more. But here, there's like a good couple pages of the Doctor just being like, I'm an absolute god. Nothing can stop me. I can do what I want. So it's definitely a roller coaster of a novelisation. It has a lot of stuff that I really enjoy, but then, like I said before, the first half, it's a lot to read, not a lot to read, but a lot of the book was quite cut and dry, and if anything, falls behind its TV counterpart, whereas the second half has like 2 or 3 very unique inclusions and some parts that are on par with the episode. But as I've got to think about this story as a whole, it's not something I would probably pick up again, simply because of that first half. Because of all of that, I will unfortunately be giving The Waters of Mars a 6.5 out of 10. I think it just falls short of that 7. I think 7 is usually, in my brain, 7 out of 10 is actually pretty good. So I just thought 6.5 out of 10 just narrowly misses out on that 7. The next one up is not exactly something I've been looking forward to. It's The Crimson Horror by Mark Gatiss.